We're recording?
Yep, we're recording.
So we definitely have more than 4 voting members today. I think the first thing to do is move to the adjustments. Well, I appreciate being offered the opportunity to chair. I have several jobs and a very full plate, and I really can't take this on, that responsibility. So that's an adjustment to the agenda, is removing myself from the chair position and nominating somebody else or whatnot, but I can't. I don't have the capacity for it.
But you still want to be an active member on the committee.
For sure, but I chair just.
Do we have any volunteers? Gail,
Gail,
Awesome.
thank you for volunteering.
wonderful.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Gail.
And so I guess we have to nominate you then?
Somebody does.
I nominate Gail. I so move.
So Carl's making the motion,
I'll second.
Janet will second it. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Thank
No
you,
one
Gail.
there. Passes unanimously.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Gail.
So
Thank you.
didn't give you a second to back out.
Well, Robin had 2 months.
Gail, since you are being just thrown as the chair at 5 minutes into the meeting,
Would you like to
I was
run this?
gonna ask, do you want to moderate? Do you want Julie to moderate? Do you want to have Robin just moderate for one meeting, or what do you want to do?
Oh, I'm pretty sure she can handle it.
I'm just giving the option in case.
Well, as long as you, as long as you coach me a little bit on what you might mean in places that I don't know, I don't mind doing it. Okay. All right. All right, so do we have any additions to the agenda or any changes that anyone wants to make? At this time, we can do it again at the end.
Because I don't notice it's not noticed here. Are you going to be asking for an executive session to follow up on the content of your executive session of 2 months ago?
I can, if you would like.
Yeah, if you think it warrants.
Does it need to
executive.
be?
Are we at a
executive
place that there's something to share?
No, there's nothing to share, so but why don't we do
Why don't
it?
we do it? Okay.
That way I can share what
Yeah.
I know, which is
Okay.
nothing, but if you have any questions, you can ask me. So we'll do that at the very end.
Very good. Thank you.
And I'll have the site ready so that somebody can make a motion.
Anything else? Anyone else? Okay. We have a few folks. What are you doing back there? Are you a citizen now?
No, I'm just here because I figure
Okay.
the video is better if it captures. Thank you, Larry's catch.
Okay. Would anyone who is not on the committee like to introduce themselves or have something to say?
John Blodgett, new member of the Board of Selectmen.
Uh-huh.
And
Hi, John.
I've got a meeting after this, so I thought I'd come in early and see you folks. I said it will be your last meeting. I
Great.
really wanted to see what's happening with that facility there.
Awesome.
He was also the chair of the 250th anniversary
with the best
celebration.
Parade ever.
It was the best parade
I'm glad
ever.
you said that. I'll rub it into someone's. Especially with the rain that we had.
It was. Janet, I thought
Well, I got to ride in the tractor.
I thought it was great.
Madam Chair. Question. I noticed there are 3 select board members sitting in the room that constitutes an illegal meeting. Is a member of the press here today?
Well,
Oh.
he
Mr.
can
Johnson.
sit in as an
He-
impartial observer,
And we are recording.
and we are recording.
Okay.
You guys, you cannot take action.
Right.
You're not taking action.
I wouldn't have thought of that.
Good.
All right.
Catch.
Yeah, it's into it.
Good,
Mhm.
good. Thanks.
I have a favor to ask. I am taking notes for you. it would help if I knew who all of you are.
Okay.
So if you could go around the room like that and have you introduce yourselves, that would really help me out.
I'm Robin Kerber.
Patty Fazio.
Janet McMahon.
Carl Solberg.
Thank you.
Gail Erdheim.
Mike Thayer.
Johnny Cosno.
Oh, Julie Kaiser. You know me, Rebecca.
It's okay, don't
Sorry.
stand up.
I think we should all stand up.
Yeah. I know, bud. I'm Jim Letton. Sorry I'm late. But I can only do so many weddings in 4 days. And I got another one tomorrow.
I stand in awe of your ability. You're gonna remember every one of these faces.
I make no guarantee.
Okay. So. next-
Way around your names, I believe.
Oh,
Okay.
do we not make it all the way around?
Yeah, I think it did.
Really? Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's go on to the minutes. Max sent out a copy of the minutes from June. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at them?
I did,
Okay.
and I'll make a motion to accept.
Second. Okay, all in favor?
Abstaining because of my absence for the second half.
You know that.
Okay. Looks like we've accepted the minutes. And thank you for doing them. All right. On to old business. Max, I'm guessing this is you measuring parking concept for Pine Tree Engineering, referring to the drawings that you sent out a while ago, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I've done a little work on GIS map, just getting an idea for a concept for what to do with the concrete pad as well as the greater area. The main reason I wanted to talk about the concrete pad is because we do have a Pine Tree Engineering on standby for us to present them an idea of what we want to do. And from previous discussions we've had with Marcus doing some of his drawings. Kind of what we experienced over at the pavilion on the 250th, just seeing that parking lot heat. And just some other basic items like the driveways, 911 only entrance, some other recommendations that Janet had heard. The concrete pad is what I think is a concept we could consider sending off to the Pine Tree Engineering Group. And then I have something, the greater Sylvania area, or a lot of the other areas that maybe it's not defined right now what we want to do, but you can start addressing as Pine Tree's working on the concrete pad, getting some designs put together. I know that Janet's pointed out that I don't have the rubble pointed out, and that can be addressed. I think the only big thing, I just want to be sure the concept idea is all right, and for those purple areas that I have marked, playground question mark, or the area next to some 26 spaces in the top left corner of the concrete pad, and even the no plan and restrooms one. If people have thoughts on what they want to see there, or they want to just maybe leave that as undeveloped for now, just have that covered up, or just have it revegetated. Julie, I didn't know if you had any other additional thoughts to the concept and timeline with Pine Tree.
Well, we did talk about having the UMO students come down and do some engineering, and then you found out that that would be a year away.
Yeah, and I have to stress that that's going to be something that not only it would be a year-long commitment, but it's a year-long commitment for something that we'd still have to get an engineer firm to still do. It's kind of like what we have going on with the Worcester parking lot. The UMO students did go down there. They looked at the parking lot to give some ideas for what to do with it. But when it comes to actually getting grants, we're going to need an official certified engineer to give the stamp of approval. So we're still gonna have to hire Pine Tree to go to the Worcester parking lot. Same thing would have to happen with the Sylvania site, where we'll be a year later, they might give the same recommendation, but then we're hiring Pine Tree to do another design.
Right, right.
And that's if we're doing grant funding. If we're not doing grant funding, then I hope everyone will open up their checkbooks and their hearts.
Can I ask a couple of questions about the site plan here, the one that's shown in color?
Yeah.
When you say revegetate, is that let it grow wild or is that an actual planting?
I think,
There's currently, I want to say. Fruit tree, flowering trees right there.
Flowering
in the
trees,
front. They
yeah.
do look nice.
They do look nice.
Yes,
The best part of the site, actually.
it actually is. Until you get down by the water. Yeah, I think he just put it there. That would be landscaped, or it could be left alone, or make it look prettier, I would say.
Okay, is it,
it's me saying that I'm not committed to anything there, whether we wanna cover it up and then plant some new grass seeds over it and leave it at that, that's one thing. If it's let nature take its course,
Mhm.
that's why I have a question mark.
When we took ownership of the property and the trees were limbed up and pruned and everything, the neighbors were very happy. So I think whatever we do there has to look aesthetically pleasing.
it looks a lot better than it did. Okay, the other question that I had was, there's restrooms there and there's, it's a good place to have restrooms, public restrooms, because there's water and sewer right in the street there. So that's a good deal. But restrooms can cause problems, especially if they're open at night.
That would be a conversation we need to have about restrooms. I don't have a problem having it be on a conceptual plan, but that would definitely be something we'd have to consider.
Okay.
And I should also note that with the concept plan I have here, this is not saying that we're gonna do this all by next year. This is me saying, this is an outline, like, we're not gonna what's the word, improv as we're going along type thing. It's just saying, like, I have 3 tennis courts down there. We might decide to just do 1 tennis court, but still leave that area if we want to expand to have up to 3 courts. If we want to have a restroom there, we can just have a designated spot to hold the restroom if we ever get the funding and the desire to actually put it there. That's the other thing I just want to.
The only thing I wanted
Yes,
to add about the
possible.
restroom was just make sure it's closer to the sewer than further away. So you might want to flip flop
Basketball courts with the restroom.
something, yeah. I'm just saying, you don't want to, just might be easier wherever that sewer comes in. That's where the bathroom potential location could be for the potential.
Good point. They've dealt with that over in Damascus.
Yes, they did.
We built
And-
that, 5 builders built that, and we're still.
Yeah.
I talked to the town manager last week. He's like, do you have any ideas about keeping this secure? It's like, no, not my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Well, I mean, part of the issue too is, who do you have clean it? Because it's gonna have to be cleaned every day and monitor it and. And that might be something that when there are large public events, it's open, but when there isn't, it's closed. I don't know. I don't know what it would look like.
Yeah.
A
So,
thought on restrooms for municipal spots like that we've seen done successfully. And at first thought, it doesn't sound great, but it is just a long-term arrangement with a porta-john company. And you have several porta-johns out there. There's no liability here. They get maintained. I mean, it'd
we
be,
have that right now at the
yeah,
field.
it's not a bad way to go. It provides the service. I mean, building a restroom is $500,000 bill. And it's just not cheap.
ADA accessibility.
Yes, all that stuff, but you can get ADA compliant porta johns through a number of different outfits around here, and it doesn't cost that much. They clean it weekly, they pump it out weekly. People can tip it over and vandalize it, whatever, not our problem.
I have a question, a kind of a general question. On that email I got here concerning the restrictions. It says you can't mess with the subsurface, the soil, dig and it says it has to go through the main department. So everything we do or try to do, how does that feedback loop work? Does the DEP come down and look and say, okay, it's acceptable? Or, I mean, that seems like a tremendous amount of regulation and kind of constriction. How does that process work?
I mean, it's very similar to how we have to do things with planning board.
Right.
So as we're getting this like even this concept plan, if the committee says, we like the concept plan, this is our master plan that we want to work towards over the next few years. We send that to the DEP and say, this is what we're planning on doing, this is what the engineer is gonna be putting a plan together for. And then DEP would have to get some sign off when we're actually gonna pull the trigger on spending for something.
So do they actually come down in person and look at the site and evaluate what was written to them?
In most cases.
So
They'll probably evaluate the plan, you know.
Yeah.
And
And if they have
Max-
really heavy duty questions, they'll come down.
they will come down on that.
I
And
mean,
in my dealings with them.
well, yeah, I mean, I did see your hand, I was just gonna quickly say, the one. I mean, for this plan, the only one, maybe two things that would be included, where there would be some digging of some kind. Would be the open space pavilion item. And the bathroom, if that's actually decided to happen. And both of those things, we'd have to talk to DEP to see if they want it, and those are two items that aren't really committed. Most of the
Right.
plan is just saying, cover it up at the parking where we're gonna just strike some line. Again, striking for basketball and tennis. And then revegetation for a good chunk of the rest.
You can add to, you can't take away. That's a good way to look at it.
Anyway,
So we could throw asphalt down, but we can't haul the crumbled asphalt up.
You
away.
can't take up the crumbled asphalt, but you can put more down.
Okay.
That's how he explained it to me to make me understand.
Okay.
A good rule of thumb.
And I saw Janet's hand up. Sorry.
thanks, that's okay. I had some thoughts on parking, first of all. I mean, I know the parade was packed with people, total chaos, but it was fun. But I feel like almost like it's a lost opportunity to devote so much of this to parking, and I'm wondering if there's a way in, as part of the plan with Pine Tree, of having it be covered with bentonite or whatever it is, some soft surface that could be both parking and open space. So I'm just throwing that out as part of something to ask them. You know, pervious, but can hold cars when you have a lot of cars. Because most of the time, we're not going to have that. And I think it's sort of be a shame to look at this huge parking lot, which is sort of what it's going to look like. So I'm just throwing that out. And I also feel like, you know, I'm not a landscape architect, but I still feel like this would benefit from having someone, even just a short conversation for a couple of hours with someone on flow. You know, I feel like the pavilion's way in the back, the restrooms in the front. You know, there's some things that I don't know if they make sense or not, but I feel like having someone, again, I'm thinking of the Belfast Park. You know, stuff is concentrated, that kind of infrastructure, probably for a reason, and where the paths are. So I'm just suggesting we try to enlist a professional for one meeting. Maybe we could find a volunteer to come, just to look at this and
We
get
have
their-
a landscape architect on our planning board. I'm sure
Yeah.
she would be
Is
there
that
to help.
Barbara?
Yeah,
Yeah, I know. I was thinking, why don't we
Yeah.
try asking Barbara?
we could do that. That's not a problem.
And then the other thing was the stairs. You know, I know when we talked to Midcoast, they said, you're crazy to put stairs in there. From a liability standpoint, and why? Because the trail system can just be a closed loop. So again, I'd advocated against that, but I don't see a reason to have stairs down to a trail when you've got a trail coming up to the parking lot. So that's another piece of this that I feel is not really necessary, but again, a landscape architect might think is really cool to have stairs there. So I don't know. So those are the only two things that jump out at me on this.
That's a real good point, because even if you're building a kitchen, you want to look at the flow of how you work. The same thing goes here. How does it flow? Perfect point.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
don't know, but this looks like it might not, or it
Right.
might, I don't know,
Why
but
is the bathroom there when I'm going to be over here?
yeah.
You know, it's same thing.
And do we have a bathroom?
And do we have, or do we do
If
the
you're gonna
porta
have a
potties?
park.
Yeah.
with
Which I think-
That's not that appealing.
No,
We're gonna have to have some type of
Something.
bathroom.
It's a,
Needs
it's
to
a,
be considered.
yeah, absolutely, at least initially.
Right.
You know,
The journey from a very rough concept, suite of concept ideas to a comprehensive plan, which becomes a capital improvement plan over a 5 or 10-year period. That journey is a very lengthy one. And Bob knows I've designed and built 3 major parks in Kent County a long time ago. I vaguely remember how we did it. It just took a long time. And allowing spaces around a concept for implementation. Perfectly safe at this time, because you can toss it out when it becomes an obvious maintenance and operations burden. I mean, you want to design around those implications. So I think we can play with this as much as we want. Pine Tree is not going to be retained to look at the ADA requirements for a pathway system, and they're not going to be looking at the landscape architectural elements of it. They're just going to be looking at the engineering for capping, filling, and creating space and removing
And
rubble.
a conceptual plan to give the DEP.
Yes.
Say yes or
Yeah,
no,
that-
or
that-
we don't like this part.
Patty has her hand up.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to the restrooms and suggest that if anyone has the opportunity and you're down in Bath on the waterfront, to check out the restrooms that they have there. They're very easy to maintain, very ADA accessible, and I believe they are not 24-hour access. They are secured at certain times. of the
I
day.
can tell you they are not 24-hour access.
Personal experience? Okay.
6 and 3-year-old grandson, and I can tell you recently, they are not 24/7.
Okay.
One of the things I would point out there is the toilets are stainless steel. They can be steam cleaned. There's, the whole thing is set up that you just go in there with a steam cleaner and clean the place and
Yeah.
it's done.
We designed all of ours like that. Everything's cleaned with a power washer.
And are they pit toilets or are they connected to sewer?
We actually ran sewer into each of our parks.
They're
It's
super.
attached,
Right.
it's
They're allowed
Yeah.
part of the
service,
sewer system.
Yeah, you pretty much have to.
And Pemaquid Point Lighthouse is adding a new bathhouse and they have plans in effect right now. for
That'd be
that. But
interesting
that
to
is
see.
something that is secured and monitored because of the lighthouse. So just options to look at.
John?
I'd just like to add, I live right across from the landing, the town landing, and there's a porta potty there. And that seems to work just fine. I mean, why reinvent the wheel and do all this plumbing when you could have one of those or two of those? You could lock it up at 6 o'clock or whatever, and there goes your, I don't know if everybody's all hell bent on building toilets when you could just use the porta potty.
And an enclosure can be built around them, a U-shaped enclosure. It's nice. I mean, it's not particularly aesthetically.
I think we're
awful.
just leaving an area for them.
Yeah,
Right.
we don't have to
Right.
make that.
You know, okay, because it just seems a little
Shrubs.
extreme.
Yeah, more shrubs.
Okay.
Right.
Yes.
Well, I think the damn Scotland one was like close to $1 million, wasn't it?
It was,
By the time to get done, well, you know,
yes, it was.
yeah.
It was close
It's an
to
expensive
1.1,
proposition.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was a lot.
20 years ago, we spent about 150,000 for a bathroom, ADA bathroom, steam clean,
Mhm.
trench drain, epoxy on the.
As
block
beautiful
wall.
as the ones in Damascata are.
So we are definitely not making a decision. We'll put it on the agenda for another time. And just say that we're saving space.
Yes, for sure.
Can we
Yeah.
just say that we do want to have some kind of bathroom
God, yeah.
facility out there because it's a rec place?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
Or they get used for that anyway. so-
Even if it's, and
Right?
one would think, yes.
Certainly off the bat, it's totally fine.
This is more about seeing if the purple areas are being turned into a different cover or more permanent fixture, like tennis courts, basketball courts. Kind of imagine that they'll be there unless there's some other moving around pieces, but from what I'm hearing from the committee, we need to talk with Barbara Boardman to see what her opinion is on getting this rearranged and then present that at the next meeting,
Would she come to our next
or
meeting?
come to the next meeting. I can see if she
I
can.
can invite-
Can ask
yeah,
her.
She's
yeah.
willing.
And also that we're gonna consider surfacing in a way that parking doesn't have to be a permanent feature of the.
Like overflow.
Yeah.
See if that's.
It has felt like too many spaces to me and a waste of space as well.
Yeah, I appreciate
Yeah.
that perspective, but bear in mind these event and pulse-driven recreational programs suddenly produce 50 or 75 cars. 2 baseball teams show up, 30 hangers on, a half a dozen other people, other vehicles. You can exhaust that parking plan that I'm looking at very easily in a recreation.
And if you
facility.
were to use the, say, we actually are going to do the open air pavilion if that's where people wanted to have their
Wedding.
farmer's market, or even the like a flea market, or even have, we just were talking about this townwide yard sale. They wanted a public space to have tables. You could draw quite a few people in.
Well, my suggestion was not, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Not to eliminate it.
My suggestion was not no parking. It was more, can we talk to Pine Tree about the option of the paved parking and then overflow that's not paved?
So like a grass.
So it doesn't look like this,
Like
a
and
giant
you
parking
can
lot,
use it.
yeah.
if
The only problem he said though, when he was here, was that covering that with and actually growing something will be very difficult. But maybe he'll figure out that.
I'll ask.
I think we should ask them as well.
We can ask.
Just along the line of what Janet's suggesting, when we have our events at Cider Hill, which is all grass, there's never a problem with parking, never. Nobody gets stuck. Ground isn't so soft when it's wet that you get sunk in the soil,
Right.
but it looks a heck of a lot better. And it's far more environmentally sound
Yeah.
than putting down asphalt.
Yeah.
So I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I
Yeah.
think you can have your parking, but you can also have an environmentally friendly place.
Gail has.
But-
I would just
Sorry.
also
Thank
want
you,
to,
Gail, that's very appreciated.
I would just want to also at some point have a discussion about buffering between the adjacent properties and this giant concrete pad, if I was living next to it. And we're contemplating a site that's this active, I would want some natural and sound barrier between and the pickleball noise, which, yes. I don't know
Well,
if
we might
anyone
have
else
to
read the
regulate.
article.
You might regulate the pickleball with the sound deadening ones.
Yeah.
That is becoming a very popular
Yeah,
thing.
the pickleball's not on the edge, so that.
Yeah.
It is more on that north end, but that's why we wanted to get the concept plan going, because let's take the, that purple, well, the parking and the purple pavilion area, or even the driveway. We gotta make sure that, you're right, it does have the buffer and screen, but then when we get close to the, what is it, Friendship Street, we don't wanna take away the site distance either,
Right.
because that's gonna be something we'll have to talk with DOT about.
Yeah, I know we were talking about having some grass, but I sort of despair. We can't remove the concrete, we can't remove the asphalt, and we can't cover it with bentonite and put clay on it and put grass on it, because you then have to irrigate it. What are we going to do with that ugly expanse of concrete and asphalt?
Well, maybe in the parking area, you use crushed stone, which is better than.
Well, isn't this what we're asking Pine Tree Engineering to tell us? I mean, I'm
That's right.
assuming there's more than one option, but and we need to ask them if some of it could be covered with sand, gravel and grass or whatever, not all just bentonite or crushed gravel, or, how does that work? But I feel like we need more.
When we did the ball fields, in the Monongalia Valley Community Foundation, we ended up putting a deal with Lane Construction, and we did recycled asphalt. So they came in with millings and put that down. It's still allowed for water to pass through it.
Permeable.
It is permeable. And that's what's actually down there. It has been down there for whatever.
20. Almost 20. I know, I think it's 12 years,
I have-
but it's a lot.
No,
more.
it's a lot longer.
Closer to
Yeah, it's been a
20.
while. Yeah. So
Everybody thinks it's.
There's some other options to your point.
Oh,
And
Yeah.
and just to add to the conversation, there's the grass called fiscal. You don't have to water it. It grows in the desert. And it's kind of like bluegrass. Not typical of the grass around here, but it is vegetative. And you can park on it and run on it and play games on it, put tents up on it. And put chairs on it, do all the kinds of things people do on lawns. And not have to stare at a black asphalt parking lot, or even a, parking lot that's not paved, but still is semi-permeable because we put gravel down, which isn't comfortable to sit on, by the way.
no, it's not.
Let's bring a chair.
Sorry.
Well, I wondered if we'd also had a conversation with the bowling alley about some parking reciprocity. If we did have an event, if we could use their lot as overflow since they are using.
If they're not
They would be
open, I
using
think
those.
I should be
Yeah.
amenable to that.
Yeah, I welcome with Sammy's entry. Well, that's part of why I came to however many 79-ish parking spaces, because I did talk with Sammy's Entertainment to see what their needs were and when they are open, what their capacity needs are, and if we can do it. And they are very open to this type of mutual agreement between us, because we do really benefit from the driveway and parking lot, and right now we're getting a good.
Many of the residents in that area do too, when they have parties. I mean, I've been at several parties on that area of Friendship, and that is where I have parked. Because I don't want to park in a ditch on
Mhm.
Friendship.
Yeah, not the best idea.
I mean, we've had a couple of fundraisers at one of the local homes there, and there's been 20 people in that parking lot who didn't want to park on the street.
So Max, what endpoint would you like for this discussion? What do you want to be able to take forward from this item?
From the sound of it, I'm gonna talk with Barbara Boardman, see if she can come to the meeting, and if not, she'll at least give some ideas of how to rearrange this puzzle. And we'll talk with Pine Tree about the revegetation option and whatever materials can be used for covering up. I guess last minute items for the committee would be these purple areas where there's the options of maybe seating, the open space pavilion, a playground. Are there any ideas on what to do with it? Or just leave it as this undetermined space for now, and then later on, you can decide if you want to put something else there. Because really, I think the focus is just the fence, basketball, the ADA ramp, closing off a driveway or two, and then what the parking areas would be, whether it's gonna be open.
Yeah, no, I think leaving it unspecified. I mean, it can be picnic tables in the interim, sure, if people are hiking down the trail or whatever, so. Makes sense to do that.
Big purple is undetermined.
And that boundary might shift if we have fewer parking spaces, or it might grade into a permeable grassy area. I could envision.
What is the date of our next meeting? I have Barbara.
Next meeting would be August 7th. Even though I think one of the agenda items is actually talking about these.
Oh, it's only peripherally relevant, I think, at this point, but we keep talking about plantings and revegetating areas. Is there interest on the committee to making sort of a commitment, whoever we work with, to a real commitment to native?
That'd be nice.
I think it's,
No plant Norway maple.
first of all, that's what is in fact will be most relevant, I mean, most successful anyway, and
Except
certainly
maybe
have-
the fescue.
there's a lot of non-native stuff out there already. Lots of multi-floor roads and all over the place. And it would be nice to, and again, it's actually the environmentally responsible, even the fiscally responsible way to do it, because it's way more likely to succeed. So hopefully we have some energy behind doing that when we do talk to all these folks about things.
Good point. Jan has.
Jan, but
Just a thought I had was, how much is this gonna be used in the winter? Are there gonna be opportunities for use in the winter? Do we need to plow it?
That's a great.
Also handicap, I guess you mentioned that earlier, but on the running track might be
Mhm.
something could be used year round. But usually from November through the end of March, there's not much traffic.
Not much
which also
people-
argues for a porta potty solution rather than investing in it.
Argument for that. Yeah. Great snowshoeing opportunities out there. Nordic skiing, everyone those areas sort of groom themselves then. Just need to clear a parking lot, not that big a deal for a municipal plow, I wouldn't think. Easy for me to say, but it doesn't seem like too big a deal.
Easy.
It's good.
Barbara said yes.
Oh, great.
Should we have next week?
Yep.
Jan has.
I just wanted to say on the winter, I mean, you, again, I feel like that can sort of wait till we see how it's used, but Belfast, again, using that as an example, because I think of it as similar, it's about the same distance from the heart of the town, and But they're closed in the winter. I mean, you can hike down there, walk your dog, whatever, but and people do, but it's not plowed and
The only thing would be if we put the ice rink down there
Oh,
too.
that'd be great. Yeah, I think it'd be great. to
So you
possibly-
probably would only plow that front parking lot for
Yeah.
that.
I think that probably is fine, but that it's not, doesn't have to happen. Especially if it costs too much.
That'd be nice to have a little place right down there.
If we were gonna do, it would be, I think it would be
And waiting
and waiting pool.
for kids.
So we have to make a space, where's the ice
Yeah,
rink?
to make
That's
it
what they
big.
did.
I
mean, I thought
I
the
would
waiting
just
pool
nice
was here
if
just
you
on a
might
hot
just
day.
take the place.
Kids and
It might be that no plan spots, or it might just take any of these areas that are like tennis or basketball. Could even just be down in the top left corner where we have all that remaining space, or we might have the pavilion.
Or on the parking lot.
On
for
the
that
parking
matter,
lot,
if
yeah.
you're not using the whole parking
Yeah.
lot. really.
The only other thing that was brought up that we've looked at in recreation for a while was the splash pad. I don't know if you've seen them for kids where there's like, it's just water that comes up and splashes and I don't know how it's recycled or anything. I don't know anything about the logistics of it. But that would be the only other,
I guess the other thing that's come
Little
up
thing.
has been a skate park, which you had mentioned last time, and a couple of folks have actually from that area have mentioned to me or something that they would really.
yeah, I'm not sure where the rec department stands on that or.
When I talked with Marcus, he said it's nice, but the tennis basketball is the bigger item, especially with 80 grade courts going. And I feel it's that area with tennis and basketball was going to go that they wanted to have that skate park. So.
Pickleball.
On pickleball, the
Pickleball.
tennis courts
Big.
or 6 pickleball. Thanks, Jim. I don't know why I didn't have that label there. Sorry,
Just a quick question. It just came to me with all this activity, all these various opportunities, is there gonna be any town representative from the rec department there? Or is it just going to be people catch can, they come in and they do what they like? Stuff.
I don't, that's mostly passive recreation. It would depend. I mean, I would assume. Like if you had the open air pavilion, that might be a nice place for summer rec to be, so then it
Right.
would be staffed,
Right.
but.
Right.
I mean, currently we have one person in our rec department and then we hire part-timers for
Okay.
summer rec, so.
Just curious.
And if you take grant funding and depending where that source is, it's not like we could charge a fee anyway for usage.
I want to also urge us to remember that we had made a commitment to getting some public feedback to the plan that we come up with and to think about how we're going to, like, at what point we really are going to do that. And to stick to it rather than for us to, end up with a plan that we're committed to without getting that feedback unless we change our mind and decide that that's not something that's going to happen. I think it's just important to figure out what the end point is before we go to the community with a plan.
Even what's allowed.
Yeah.
Just to speak to the whole skateboard thing. When we were researching it as part of the rec committee, there was some real concern with what that brought in. And it wasn't positive. There was a lot of things that's happened in other communities that maybe we may want to step back from that. So that's why it wasn't really a strong item to bring forth. We're also trying to look at the senior
Yeah.
scenario with people playing pickleball, that still play basketball. And, maybe the idea of how can we access the Madomic River down the road? So you gotta, the vision can't just stop here.
I'm
But,
curious.
We have to walk before we run.
On the skateboard issue, what is the implication there? That there's a criminal element or they're rowdy or?
Rowdy,
What is?
drugs, a lot of things, gangs, those are the
Right.
types of things that we've seen in other communities. And, you want to try to limit it if you can, to be honest with you.
But on the same token, you want to involve the young kids in the community. So you don't want to just say, okay, I don't agree with that, so no skate park. Whereas there might be a bunch of kids.
Oh, absolutely.
So I'm wondering, how
Can
you
we-
go about deciding?
Can we Well, again, it was based on what has been observed in other communities.
See.
I mean, it wasn't just, I mean, and unfortunately, the other thing too is who maintains it? There's a lot of work
Well, there's,
involved.
and I
in
think that was part of when that idea came to Marcus, and Marcus did the research on it, who's our recreation director. He calls, he doesn't make decisions or recommendations to the rec committee in a vacuum. He
No,
calls
it does not.
all the other communities that have similar, so like when we were talking about building a community center, he reached out to who recently built community centers. It's a large discussion, and he gets a lot of input from other communities.
Well, that's why I said, is there gonna be someone down there that could observe what's going on? And stuff like that. I mean, I don't know.
Just a quick point on this, on the skateboard, it doesn't have to be anything really developed big. Pemaquid Lake Campground has a little skateboard. I mean, it's small, but it serves a purpose. Right, and kids have got a place to go and have fun.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Jan, because we struggled in all of our parks in Kent County in Delaware with the idea of two things: splash pads and the very active use of three things: the very active use and potential attractive nuisance of restrooms open beyond dusk and dawn, and the skate park. So we never developed a skate park, but we threw in these little things we call skate spots. This single feature. So you get some smaller kid who isn't going to be challenged, but you're not going to get some 16-year-olds who are challenged, they're not challenged by the one rail or the one dip, whatever they call that darn thing. A skate spot is a very small feature. It's not going to attract a gaggle of 14, 17-year-olds, but young kids are going to give it a shot. That's your place there. It's something less than the whole.
You don't need a swimming pool, a former swimming pool,
Are there liability implications though, in terms of whoever underwrites or this? I mean, it's certainly way more dangerous and a likelihood for their injury than pickleball, for instance.
If you're doing a half pipe, I would think so.
Well, yeah.
So
Yeah.
I haven't, my experience with them has been very limited.
Our one skate spot had a single up ramp and a rail separately. So you could practice back and forth on this rail, and maybe you can get crazy with it too. You shoot up the rail and get velocity and come down. But that's
Our
it.
issue we had in New Jersey wasn't so much the skaters, it was the bicyclers that then came to the
The
skate park.
BMX, yeah,
And that
street
became,
style bikers, yeah.
it became kind of ruined it for the skateboarders. So it was
Yeah.
interesting.
Well, and like the idea of creating opportunities for the 14 and 17-year-olds that we've sort of somehow just framed as being problematic. I mean, I think creating opportunities for them is actually would be a really wonderful thing.
Well
Not
said.
necessarily,
Absolutely.
given that we don't want to attract them, let them vandalize elsewhere.
I would love us to, when we put this together, to just like kind of do a check and make sure we're aiming to meet the needs of the whole.
And I think that's why we included
Yeah.
Jim here, because Jim's on the recreation committee and they've spent a lot of time figuring out the needs and doing surveys and things like that.
So I just wanted to, speak to John's point about monitoring, if you will, these sites. There's nobody monitoring the tennis courts up at 80 Gray, and I don't even know how often they get used. I never see anybody there.
There's not, we don't
So-
have, other than summer rec, we don't even have a monitor for the ice rink when it's functional and frozen, unlike this winter, where we could have had fish in it.
I would
think it
say,
froze 3 days.
I would say that if we had toddler and kiddie friendly stuff like the wading pool or the called the splash pad, moms are going to be there.
Yeah.
And they're going to be doing the monitoring,
Yeah.
at least during the summer when the kids are there.
It's a good argument for paying attention to multi-age
Yes.
facilities, because then there are community monitors, you're right.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, and Matt touched on it, the liability insurance, part of this, we haven't even looked at. And there may be things, policies that will not cover it. For example, I grew up in a town in northern Minnesota where we had a toboggan slide. It was literally a tube of ice. And the year after we put that in, no more insurance. Never did it again. It was too dangerous. So that could be a limiting factor.
And I guess the one other thing that I think about, because like the thing that I would be using the most would be the trail. And having it be so busy and noisy that you wouldn't even want to use the trail. Is something that I think about. So just figuring out the noise and like the activity level so that the trail is a nice place to go. Be great.
No, I was just gonna say, I didn't know if we wanted to go on the greater concept or just table the item and probably continue discussing.
Maybe we should just hold with the pad today, because we're gonna come back to it next.
Barbara has agreed
Okay,
to come
great.
to our next meeting.
Great, okay. So are we good with this and ready to go on to lead minutes? Yeah, okay.
I think Max
Yeah.
sent to you, and I apologize for it being reasonably late. My mom passed away, so I was out for a while. But we did get a response from Leadvance and pass it down in case you didn't see it, because I know Max sent it out today.
Up there.
Does everybody have a copy down there? So this was from their attorney, who we've been waiting for a response for. But Leadvance does not, they don't support removing the covenant so that the property could be sold as a residence.
So that whole thing about refurbishing the building then is off the table
Well,
If
this
they
is,
don't-
they're talking about it as a residence.
as a.
So no objection to commercial space.
It did
Oh,
not,
can be-
I did not see where they objected to the
Okay.
commercial space, but as a resident.
As a resident, so.
Did you ask about the commercial?
Yes.
Okay, so this is.
But again, anything that would be done would have to go through approval. Leadvance and DEP. It was a little interesting when they actually said in here approved by Maine DEP, and Maine DEP has said, and it would have to be approved by
Yeah.
Leadvance, so
Yeah.
it's kind of a double-edged sword there.
But
But again, they, that's where we're at with them. I would, and DEP has been very clear, they would not support it being residential. So I think that's ended that.
So off the table.
It's off the table.
So that puts us back with potentially commercial or it could be sold if dismantled or moved.
Correct.
And do
They
we-
didn't have any issue with that, neither did DEP if it was dismantled and moved, as long as we're not digging.
So I guess the question is where we were a couple months ago. Are we still thinking of having it go on the market? Or do we want to make a decision one way or another so this doesn't just keep getting?
Yeah.
And what does it take to come to that decision, I guess?
I think you need to make a recommendation, it would have to go to select board and they have the ultimate decision to make. There was a question Max had about some proposal. About dismantling it.
Oh, yeah, that was on the,
Yeah.
I think that's on the agenda.
Oh, okay.
by
It is.
Michael
Mike.
Anderson.
Iverson.
It's a $25,000 cost to have it removed for, my business is dismantling, repairing and relocating antique structures for use, as well as replace, restoration and repair of existing building. This is a $25,000 cost for hazardous materials handling and removal. But I don't know if that means. I tried to contact this person today, but I couldn't get hold of them. I didn't know if that meant that they're just gonna move the site or if this is just strictly hazardous removal.
He's exceptionally good.
He had talked about actually removing the structure, but that price was based on the fact that at that moment he had a buyer. For for it and. We'd have to begin the
Buyer.
process over again. Yeah,
Well, and he also, didn't he want Waldemar to pay 25,000?
he wanted Waldemar to pay 25,000 to him and he would cover the rest of the cost of those. Yeah, so it cost us.
Basically splitting the cost of the hazardous.
Yeah.
waste.
Mhm.
The rest of it, he would do without charging the town.
County has.
Just an observation. So according to them, a resident can't live in there, but commercially, you still have people in there. I don't get what's the difference. You're still in the building. I mean, is there? Am I missing something? Am I missing the obvious?
I mean, this is something that these people just have. I'm working with another town
Right.
that has a very similar restriction where they don't want residential people there, but they'll allow, they've allowed an aquaculture business, the land-based
Right.
agriculture business there. It's because it's on.
I'm just thinking it's a non sequitur because so a resident has people living there, correct?
Right.
At a commercial business, you have business, you have people coming in and out, probably. What is it, where am I missing this?
It's exposure limitations. There's dramatically much less exposure. If I'm going there once a month for an appointment, it's very different than living there and sleeping there.
Right, but if you go one time and you get exposed to that asbestos, it only takes one time,
Or could you have staff that are there for 8 hours?
or mold, or what have you.
Yeah.
It takes one exposure, actually.
Yeah.
Right now, they're just talking about the sites. in general. They're not even talking about just the building.
Yeah, they're not, yeah, they're talking about the site.
Just
whole
the site.
Yeah,
Not even the
they weren't concerned about the mold and.
Yeah,
It's weird.
it's just my impression that I've been on this committee for 5-6 years that led me, they're just obfuscating, slow walking everything. They're, you know.
Well, this was the covenant that was put in with the DEP, so it's not just lead bands.
The DEP, right? I mean, whose side are they on?
What is-
Yeah, it hasn't.
I'm just, what does it take for us to come to a decision, I guess is my question. We put it to the select board already,
Right.
and then they came back and said you had to get some more information from realtors. Which we did,
Yes.
and now it's been sitting, so now we know it can't be used as a residence.
Right, we answered those questions.
yeah.
But commercial's always been on the table.
Commercials on the table, do you,
Do we? So the question.
What-
is,
what do you-
demolish it or-
do you demolish? I think you're down to, do you demolish it
Or try to sell it?
and utilize the property in some fashion? Or, and Max, is it demolish, is there potential for a grant if it were to be demolished?
There is a path to do it. Another option is we can do a phase 1, phase 2 environmental site assessment, like what we've done with the schools already. We could see if the same thing would happen with the Hawks' house, and then that's to see about.
Hadn't you already said that we were gonna do that?
That was going to be in the process, and that we did get a grant to do the asbestos review. There was a $300 asbestos project. That was
An assessment protocol.
Assessment.
that's all
There
it is.
was.
And we have the funding for that, so we can start that asbestos thing any day now.
Well, we should.
But
Yeah.
phase 1 and phase 2 is something that I had to clarify with DEP, and I'm trying to get a hold of someone. Just
Because the asbestos analysis is not part of phase 1 or phase 2.
Correct.
It's a separate thing, so we can.
So, but phase 1 and phase 2, he's working on making sure
Okay,
that we would qualify for a phase 1 and phase 2, because it's a record site.
okay.
Janet,
So
do you
so
have a-
would that be the logical next step from your perspective to go ahead and get that?
I
work on
guess
getting
so.
that
I mean,
done?
I just don't know,
Yeah.
if, we come up with, all right. Try to put it on the market, but you have to go to DEP before it can be subdivided out. It's like a chicken and egg.
Mhm.
I don't know. I personally, I feel like I'd be ready to make a decision on
Mm.
just not dealing with this anymore. I mean, every year we wait. It just gets more damage, but
And there's demolish. Oh, I'm sorry, you raised your hand.
No, I just gonna say, I agree with you, Janet. It's, make a decision,
right.
I mean, and I still don't understand. So if we all here say, okay, we should just demolish it. And then it goes to the select board?
Correct.
And does the select board have the power to say, okay, we're gonna demolish it? How does that work?
So this is a committee that strictly does recommendations to
Right.
the select board. So in the end, it's ultimately their decision. However, you're a committee for a reason. I would assume that they would give very heavy weight to what your recommendation
I see.
is. But the questions they're gonna ask is, okay, if it's demolition, the first thing they're gonna do is say to Max, how do you pay for it? Where does the money come from?
There's some grant funding and then there's the TIF.
Correct,
Hopefully.
and they would go through that process, and then there would also be, if you were going to sell it.
Yeah.
Then. You know, that would be something they would want to know, and what is the price range that you are thinking that you could potentially get for a commercial, since residential, we now know is totally off.
And so if you,
From here to this, I'm sorry, does the town folk have anything to say, any input in that if? We
That's what I
we
was gonna bring
suggest,
up.
yeah, we suggest.
Later on in November or in
Yes,
April, is it gonna be a ballot?
it would
Right.
be, it would
Let
be,
the town-
it would be a ballot question if you
That's right.
decide to sell it in
There you go.
in November or at town meeting. Typically, big decisions like that, because they can be controversial, we typically put on town meeting,
Right.
which would be in June of next year.
And what's the time frame? When would you need a recommendation?
By February of 2024, I need something to go into the June meeting, because then that's when the ballots are printed in March.
so when you say the sell it option, that's an 8-acre parcel back to the water. So you'd carve off an acre, half an acre in the house and sell that, and the remaining parcel would go to the. You know, the 6 or 7 acres. So what does it mean
It
when you
would-
say sell it?
So what was discussed prior to this was about an acre lot. An acre or 2 lot would be sold for a commercial purpose
And the remaining 6 acres would go to the adjoining property.
into the, yes.
I think we've already decided
Yeah.
that.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's consensus
But
there.
but according to this, it has to be approved by DEP regardless, if we're
Correct.
gonna subdivide it.
And
Whereas if it's disassembled and moved, if somebody wants to buy it that way,
And
We
you
don't
could
have
also
to
do
do
that. You could have somebody buy it and have it disassembled and.
But this is an extraordinary deal from Michael Ellerson because he has a market for it. So there's demolishing it and there's doing this, 2 very different
Yeah.
things. Demolishing it is going to cost a lot of money
Absolutely.
and have it all up. This doesn't because he has a buyer. He essentially flips the house. We could potentially feel good about, you know, sort of the nostalgia and the history of it. It's a little sad that it didn't work out, that it's there and turned into some amazing thing. Maybe that's just not doable. And like taking it off the table, making a decision on this, having that place dismantled for $25,000 or $50,000 coming up with that money, having it gone. And adding, put 8 acres to the remainder of the, 43 acres or whatever it is to the property. That's-
And
That's
you
really
also
good.
have the ability to put that out. To public,
uh,
so you might get somebody similar to him or somebody who actually would pay the town for it too. We don't know. 'cause
Yeah. that's a-
Request for
Like,
proposal.
is that what you were gonna?
Yes, that was my thought.
Very good.
Why not list the house, just the house and not the real estate?
You could do that too.
Yeah.
You could do it both ways.
For salvage rights, for the house. or
Right.
whatever.
Yeah, then Alderson and others would step up and they'd be a competitive environment and we'd get what we get.
Is there any resale value in dismantling that place with the barn, like I know old barns? Is there any way that you can accrue any financial gain by dismantling the whole place and then selling off the pieces?
So that's what he'll do. That's what this
That's
is.
So he's gonna do that.
But instead of selling the pieces as salvage, he's contemplating, he had someone who was willing to buy the whole thing and rebuild the house.
Oh,
someplace else.
oh, my goodness sakes. Okay.
I like that idea.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I like that.
Well, I'll pose the question. I move that we list the house and not the real estate.
So that might be a different thing that we could do without the voter approval. I'm gonna have to check that
Okay.
because it's not real estate, it's property.
Also, it was also a gift to the town. And the select board has jurisdiction on gifts.
Well, no, you have jurisdiction to accept the gift.
Right, also implied to dispose of it.
Kind of, yeah.
I think I see where you're going. I just don't know how that would play, but I do think that if you're just selling the house, it's a little bit different than
But they'll have. to
I will
approve it
find out.
They
regardless,
would have
huh?
to
They
approve
have
it,
to
yeah,
approve it.
so whatever it is, it's a recommendation.
Part of Julie's homework.
Yeah.
that will be, I will find out the difference between
House in the lot.
selling the house. Just the house.
Right.
But it
And
also-
what approval we need for that from the DEP. and what we can do and what that process is.
Yeah, it's more than just selling the house. Someone say, okay, great, we'll buy the house. Can we lease the land it's on? Stay here.
Well, no, it would
So
be
it's sell-
selling and remove, it would be.
Yeah, you put out
we
an
would craft
RFP.
it so that we would say this is dismantling and removing the home.
The
Well, essentially-
contingencies would say
Right.
that, along with no digging.
with no
Right,
dig- right.
it would have to put out like a request for proposals to
Right.
someone to.
And want professionals.
Yeah.
Safe.
Yeah, we don't just want, you know,
Joe Blow.
we don't want, you know, Bob down there with his hammer and.
Right, man.
Just bring it back, Mike did make the motion a bit earlier about selling the house.
Well, should we wait for Julie, I guess?
I
I'll
mean,
retract it if.
I will have I will ask the attorney the proper questions there, and I will also talk to the DEP about if they're gonna have an issue if we just remove the house. I think when we talked about this before, about actually just moving the house, they didn't have an issue, but let me just make sure.
Just and double check on the moving
Right.
too, so we have all the
Right.
answers for.
That was-
Hopefully that's all.
Because he was, Max was on Max, DEP Max, not Max.
Max,
Just Max. I believe, and I could be totally wrong, but I believe when I talked to Max about because remember, there was a point where we said, oh, could it be moved? When we had that one gentleman go through it,
Less fossil.
less fossil, that it could be typically, I think it was him who said they normally lift them up, move them over, put it on something, so they wouldn't necessarily need to dig anything. So we'll check.
No one's gonna do that.
Nobody's, not that location.
No,
I
no,
Utilities.
Utilities.
hope the committee makes the recommendation, because everything Julie's talking about. If we have a recommendation on which to act, then it's a stronger ask. Because the committee has recommended this, and we're doing the research. And that part of it's done. If it goes to the select board, we can vote based on the merits of what Julie.
And it would be
found out.
really good if somebody other than Mike made that motion, because Mike is
Yeah,
a
but-
select board member.
yeah.
So Janet, you're making that motion?
Yeah, although did you want to say something first?
The only other question I have is it on a foundation?
Mhm.
Yes.
Granite,
So
granite.
it's granite, so that's gonna have to be closed
Yes, that would be.
without
part
a
of the
doubt.
project.
And that should be part of the.
The engineering.
Well,
stuff.
we
Yeah.
failed, whoever
Yeah.
gets that house
We'll
is
get
going
that
to
house.
want the foundation. The foundation's going wherever that house
Right.
goes. It's the highest value.
And then,
Really.
If they can move it.
If they can.
Oh, they can
without
love it.
digging.
yeah,
Well, I mean, I don't think,
Without
yeah, they can get in,
disturbing
they can pick them
Yeah.
up,
Pick 'em
and
up.
haul them off, so. You're right, that might be digging.
yeah.
Just a question, what would it take, or is it possible to have somebody from DEP attend a meeting? So if they're here, then we can ask.
Max has
It's
been.
once a month for an
Yeah,
hour.
Max has. We have a really good relationship with Max. I think we should maintain that. I think we should ask him. I think I email him and he puts it in writing, I think that's a good way to go.
Yeah, the meeting we had with them, I will say personally, was not the most, it wasn't contentious, but
Max,
the
Glo-
committee felt like he was evading a lot.
I
And
thought.
so
They don't want to commit.
I think if we ask specific questions, like
I
what you're
think when
doing,
we
and
have
get those
specific
answers. we'll
questions, he's
probably
Do it in
do.
writing.
He's got
Just
a lot of
90.
rules to follow, man.
Yeah.
It's a tough position for him.
So are we holding the recommendation?
No, I think
board
Janet
until
has made
next
it.
meeting?
I was
Okay,
gonna-
I'm sorry, okay.
If Mike can't move it, I was gonna move that we recommend that we put out for bid, a proposal for bid to remove or move the house. I don't know how that works. and have
Dismantle, remove.
To move or
Dismantle
to-
or.
To move or
or move it
dismantle,
if somebody
move or
wants to.
dismantle, yeah. okay.
Yes.
Okay,
And
any-
to the select board.
So somebody just needs to second.
Anyone, any second?
I'll second it. So you're looking at an RFP,
Yeah.
we ask for a proposal.
Okay.
I would just like to go on record saying, even though you're not sure, Julie, I would open that up to the town to see if you, even if you just want the house versus the land. See if, how they feel about it.
Town as in like, do a town meeting?
Yeah, just see how people, in some cases, I've read where if you got asbestos and mold and all that, so, it's nice to have people, if you're gonna demolish it. They should know, have an input in it. And also, as an aside, if there's 3 select people here, does that pose any issue? How about the other 2 selectmen who are not hearing the discussion? When it come time to.
So what,
Yeah.
so what happens is. I was gonna bring this up at the end of the meeting, They asked at the last select board meeting, Will Pratt, one of our select board members, asked for a presentation from the Sylvania committee at the second meeting in July. So by the second meeting in July, I should figure out all of these, hopefully, answers to these questions. So if maybe Gail and another member too would like to come to the select board meeting, you can then update them on your thoughts on this. I can make them aware of it tomorrow night, and all the meetings are taped, so if they would like to listen, they're more than welcome to. The three of them cannot make any decision at a meeting that they're at. They can't discuss it. They have, even though they're a select board member, they don't give up their right to also be a citizen. So they're not acting on anything here during this meeting. But they can attend any meeting they want. They just can't discuss anything at that meeting with each other or have a vote. Like, they couldn't sit here and vote today on this motion. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, I'm such an open person in government. I just, you even don't even want to have the hint of anything done that's not entirely above board. It just.
Well,
not that it
as
is, not
somebody
that
who
it is.
spent their entire career in government, it doesn't matter how good you are at it, there's gonna be somebody who says that.
So, well, and, you know, anybody who wants to bid on this, if that's what ends up
It's
ultimately
a public
happening,
bid.
anybody can bid on
Anybody
it,
can
who's
bid
a
on it.
member of this town. or
As a
not
member of the
this
town or not, it has, yeah, I mean, so all select board would be doing would be either one, if they may choose and say, hey, put this on them.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to have unless you're selling the actual property. And that's where I'm not sure what constitutes something that has to go on the warrant or not.
We did ask a question on the survey last
Mhm.
year about to get feedback on disposal of the house and
right.
demolition or removal of the house.
What's
Got pretty high marks.
It was a high one, people didn't feel feel strong one
Yeah.
way or the other, so it seems like as long as there's a plan behind it, there's.
Right.
How to be.
And we publicize it.
Oh, it would be very public.
Yeah, so
I
the
mean,
public
but
will-
it typically when we bid something like that, it's published in the newspaper, and a lot of times when it has anything to do with construction. Oh, I can't remember the name of a service calls, you probably know what it is. I want to say. Blue Book, but
Dodge
it's not.
scans?
Dodge,
Dodge
the Dodge report. or
Dodge
something
reports,
called.
yeah.
What was the nature of this? Were we just tire kicking? Was he tire kicking? Like, why do we have this estimate for $25,000? Like, what, where did this come from? Did we ask him to?
I don't know, that was something Mark talked about. 2
So,
meetings ago, I think.
yeah, we had a subcommittee to think
Mhm.
about what to do with the Hobbs's house and make recommendations. And one of the things that the subcommittee did was have a few folks from real estate universe and renovation universe, like Les and Mike come out and take a look just to give us a sense
Got it.
of
So
what
that's
was valuable, and that's where it came from.
It's a smoking deal. I wish we should just say yes.
Okay, yeah.
That's what I think.
So
We're
there's
not
no
gonna get a
commitment, it was just-
proposal this good with it.
Just pointing out, there was the motion on.
Yes,
Just wanted to
Yep.
make sure.
I remembered. Okay,
It
so,
always gets lost.
so let's take a vote.
Well,
All
we're
is,
Still discussing.
oh, are we
that-
still discussing?
Yes.
We have to second it too.
We
I-
did
I
discuss, it was
seconded
seconded, yeah,
And
okay.
then-
The-
That's a question.
The only question, I know there was the survey, Julie, was about the house's house.
About the use.
And the town voted. The only question I had about that, and I still do now, did the good town folks of Waldeboro have all the information about that Hofs's house that they needed to make an informed decision? Did they know there was asbestos? Did they know there was mold? Did they know there was lead pipe? That was my only concern, and I don't know if that's
Well, if
beyond my
somebody-
scope.
If somebody's taking it away, I can understand if we were gonna sell it as a residence,
Right.
absolutely, or even as a commercial property that they would, but if somebody's gonna take it away and be,
There
take
would
on the
be a-
liability.
It's for.
There would be a time too that they'd have an inspection period, so people, I mean, we're not just gonna, normally in an RFP, you say at 10 o'clock on this day. There's an inspection period for 2 hours, and the people who are interested will come and inspect the home and decide what they're gonna do,
And we've certainly had situations where RFPs have been issued based on the select board's decisions and when people in the public got wind of it and objected, the process came to a halt. Yeah, so the public process continues even once the select board makes a decision.
I think. The only thing I have, I'm sorry, I've been in the healthcare field for 36 years. I've dealt with people who who had asbestosis. I know that's outside and, you know, it's probably a low probability, but you can still get it. I've dealt with a lot of patients who have mold issues. So those two things, I'm all for the health.
Yeah.
And that's why I maybe have gone a little not overboard, but that's my concern, and it always has been.
So taking it away makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Right.
Right in the building.
And however it's taken away, whether it's dismantled or
Yes.
picked up and moved,
Right.
the RFP would
Heavily
include
regulated.
language to make sure
Sure,
that the
and-
asbestos and mold was still.
Okay, that's fair.
I think.
Yes, the RFP itself, the drafting process would articulate all of the diligence required of the
Sure,
contractor. And that would include any hazardous materials, any compliance with the state requirements for containment prior to demolition. And there's a very extensive list, as Jim DiStefano indicated, who came from public health to explain this to us. So the RFP, the crafting of an RFP is an art and a science, and there's a lot of detail that's going to go in it. My only question is, and knowing that you all will be doing that and very thoroughly, I know, are we going to go ahead with our diligence on the asbestos lead grant assessment first? I mean, as a precondition of putting it out for notice,
$300 one, or are you?
Yeah.
talking paid?
Yeah.
Yeah,
$300.
that, we have the grant, you guys can start that any day now.
Well, I'd like to make that a precondition to
Okay.
exploring.
And what does that get you? What's the $300? I mean, I know there's a grant when you do it, but
Mhm.
it's assessing what the risks are, the asbestos and the lead, or.
Well, you could speak better to it because you wrote the grant, but I think we
It
know
was
it.
Based on, I think.
There was some question, excuse me.
That's
I'm
about
sorry.
2 hours of work.
There was some question over
That
what
will.
was
Village.
asbestos there.
Right.
There was some question, there were some obvious things, and then there was some question over other materials that could have asbestos in them, which is why. we
Right, so we
recommended-
just, at the end, we know what was in there.
Yeah, I think there were about 10 sample sites that were indicated to us by Jim DiStefano from Public Health. And each one of those is going to cost you about $30. That's where we got the number.
So it's a visual inspection plus lab testing.
It's got the.
Of any suspicious looking substances.
Sorry.
Yeah, and a written report explaining everything.
So we'll get that done, that way we can make that available when the RFP goes up.
Any other comments, questions about this motion before we take a vote? Okay, someone help me phrase the motion. The motion was, Janet, yeah.
Dismantle or to, I guess, to the select board to dismantle or move. This contingent on this asbestos grant.
It was a motion to recommend to the
Right.
select board that an RFP be put out for the dismantling / removal of the Hofstas house.
Yes.
Thank you. That's whatever.
Nice second.
All in favor? Opposed? Okay, so moved. What time do we need to end tonight?
If there's going to be a meeting at 6 o'clock, I'm gonna have to get going, but I think the only items left are the meeting and the yard sale item and the executive session, if you're actually gonna do that. So I don't know if.
Should we shoot for 5:30 and maybe table the yard sale and go to the executive session? Or do you think we have time for the yard sale?
Well, we,
Yeah.
I did get approval to put whatever we need on Gov Deals if we want to sell any.
Okay,
Okay,
there was only a
Okay.
couple items
okay,
that were really, that
Right.
would make a difference.
okay. So we're all fine.
So it's
Do we need to
So,
move anything? Have we
Does
already
anyone
done
need
that? Yeah.
us to explain what those items are specifically?
You did at the last meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just didn't know.
Okay, okay. Good deal.
If we sit on this board, are we
You can,
disqualified from.
no, 'cause it's a public bid.
See it both ways.
Someone would bitch about it.
Okay, what do we need to say to go into?
If you want to go into an executive session,
Yeah.
it would be a motion to go into executive session to discuss. Hold on,
Where's the meeting time?
consideration of condition or acquisition of real or personal property.
This is the best meeting.
And that would be under 405 6
Oh my God.
C.
Can we have one of those?
So
Okay, so
somebody
we
could
have-
just make that motion,
I'm-
just say-
I so move.
and then a second.
All right.
And we will not be taking any, this board won't be taking any action after this, so the meeting can just end.
No, can we do the meeting dates? Can we do the meeting dates afterward? Or would you like to?
It would, if you did the meeting dates right
Now?
before, it would be much quicker and easier.
Okay, let's do that.
August 7th, I think, is what we got Barbara for.
August 7th is Barbara's coming at 4.
Okay.
4:30 is when we usually meet, but if people like how we move to 4 o'clock or any thoughts.
Doesn't matter to me.
And who's Barbara again?
Barbara Boardman, landscape architect.
That's good.
She's on the planning.
I guess the only thing I would say is that if somebody is working full-time, 4 o'clock may be a challenge to participate. 4:30 is already a challenge, I think, for some people to meet that. Or it was,
I can ask her to change it to 4:30. That way
I
she
just
can.
throwing that out there. I'm good either way.
Our only issue was we were running long into the 6 o'clock meeting.
If I were ever to propose just via or email thread, just an informal get together at the Sylvania site. Like Robert and I were kind of late getting into this. I would love to just hang out there and walk around and share what we've explored and found there sometime and to hear about what other people have. And I think it would help me in terms of sort of the bigger vision. So if I ever just sent out an email out saying, hey, we're going to head over there at this day at 2 o'clock, that's something that people might be interested in.
Well, Janice and I have been at the site many times. I'm sure.
Yeah.
And we've done
We'd be
that.
happy to walk around.
Yeah, just because.
Although, and
you
I
might
think,
start seeing it differently in
Yeah.
other people's eyes.
or it might be after the meeting with Barbara that we want to walk.
Yeah.
You know, I
It
think
would be really helpful.
seeing that on the ground with her would be helpful.
Yeah, it would be really helpful.
It doesn't follow the same rules, Max, as the planning board where you can't have more than 2 members go to a site.
It's a committee.
I don't know.
Yeah, usually once you get over 2, it's.
Well, no, it's a quorum. You would have to get over the quorum. So there's how many members now?
Oh, to constitute a meeting?
Yeah.
So you need 6. So if you stay 5, you're good.
Oh,
And if the other person happens to be hiking there, you just have to.
Take a night.
It's like,
This is turning.
I don't see why the committee can't have an official visit to the site.
right, we could.
You just have to, if the entire committee wants to go and you think you're gonna have more than 5 people, Max just has to do a public notification.
Okay,
Which is me just putting it on the website.
which is worth just in case.
Yeah.
Someone will say, hey, I want to go.
Let's just do that.
And
Yeah.
having an official meeting is actually not a bad idea. We've never done that.
It's a really good idea.
There,
Good idea.
like our.
It's a great idea.
Just let Max
September
know
meeting.
so he can do the notification.
Okay.
We found like a 17th century unbelievable foundation there that was
Oh, my goodness.
not easy to find. that
Really,
we would
really
love
cool.
to share.
Couldn't find
No
it.
kidding.
Maybe like do a little homework on that.
Wow.
Very early. So
And there's no pit, no cellar pit associated with it.
Wow.
lots of gold doubloons and mason jars.
Yeah.
So the
Right.
August 7th meeting is the next meeting, and are we gonna do 4:30? Is that? Is that okay? All right.
I can't do this.
I'm good either way. I just wanted to throw that out there that
Definitely.
4:30.
4:30 works better.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's I prefer. Okay,
Just executive session.
executive session thing.
Did you vote it?
We didn't take the vote, did we?
Yeah, we have to vote.
We have to
You have
vote on
to
it
vote,
too,
yes.
okay?
Yeah.
You have to repeat
You have
everything
to
she
vote to
said.
go into executive session.
Okay,
Some,
all in favor of going into executive session, like Julie said?
I-